Before sunrise, the camp is already awake, not because anyone slept well. The ground beneath the wagon is hard, cold, and uneven. Wind presses against the canvas cover, making it breathe like the ribs of some enormous animal. Somewhere in the darkness, an ox shifts its weight, a chain rattles, a child coughs from beneath a blanket that has not been dry in days. There is no alarm clock. There is only the knowledge that if you do not move soon, you will fall behind. And on the Oregon Trail, falling behind can become a death sentence. It is the middle of the 19th century. Behind you lies the Missouri River, the unofficial edge of the settled United States. Ahead lies nearly 2,000 miles of prairie, desert, mountains, rivers, disease, exhaustion, and uncertainty. On a modern highway, the distance between Missouri and Oregon can be crossed in a few days. For the emigrants of the 1840s and 1850s, it could take 5 or 6 months. That is 5 or 6 months without hospitals, without weather forecasts, without reliable maps, without refrigeration, without emergency rescue, and often without any clear understanding of what waited beyond the next hill. You have heard the promises: rich soil, mild weather, cheap land, a new beginning. Perhaps a newspaper advertisement described Oregon as a paradise where crops grew easily and opportunity seemed almost unlimited. Perhaps a neighbor returned from the frontier with stories of green valleys and rivers full of salmon. Perhaps economic hardship, debt, political ambition, religious hope, or simple restlessness convinced you that remaining at home was more dangerous than leaving. You sold what you could. You loaded the rest into a wagon. And now, before dawn, somewhere on the Great Plains, you discover what those promises failed to mention. The Oregon Trail is not a road. It is not a single clear path cut neatly across the continent. It is a shifting network of wheel ruts, river crossings, cut-offs, campsites, burial grounds, and uncertain decisions stretching from the Missouri frontier toward the Pacific Northwest. The trail changes with weather, season, traffic, and rumor. One year, a crossing may be shallow. The next year, it may be deadly. One week, grass may cover the prairie. A few days later, thousands of livestock may have stripped it bare. A guidebook may warn you about a difficult hill, but say nothing about the contaminated water waiting beyond it. A trader may recommend a shortcut because it saves time. He may be correct. Or he may be trying to sell supplies to travelers trapped by the route he promoted. You are not crossing empty wilderness. Long before your wagon arrived, indigenous nations lived, traveled, hunted, traded, fought, negotiated, and built communities across these lands. The Pawnee, Oto, Omaha, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Lakota, Shoshone, Bannock, Nez Perce, Cayuse, Umatilla, Walla Walla, and many other peoples knew the rivers, seasons, plants, and migration routes far better than the newcomers moving west. To the emigrants, the landscape may appear open. To the people already living there, it is home. Every stream has a history. Every mountain pass has meaning. Every grazing ground supports lives already connected to it. The Great Migration West is therefore not simply a story of courage and survival. It is also a story of invasion, pressure, disease, broken agreements, and the steady transformation of indigenous land into American territory. The wagon train carries families and possessions. It also carries an empire. But in the grey light before sunrise, such enormous historical forces feel distant. Your immediate problem is breakfast. There is no fresh milk unless an animal still produces it. There is no refrigerator. There are no sealed packages. Your food must survive heat, rain, dust, insects, river crossings, broken containers, and months of movement. Flour is precious. So are bacon, beans, rice, coffee, dried fruit, cornmeal, salt, and sugar. Some families bring hard bread or crackers. Others carry dried meat, preserved vegetables, vinegar, molasses, and spices. Wealthier travelers may begin with more variety, but the trail punishes excess. Every pound matters. The wagon is not simply transportation, it is a moving calculation. Too little food, and you may starve before reaching the mountains. Too much cargo, and your animals may collapse. The image remembered by later generations is often a massive covered wagon pulled dramatically across a beautiful horizon. The reality is smaller, harsher, and less romantic. Most emigrants use relatively light farm wagons rather than the giant freight wagons associated with commercial transport. The wooden body is covered with canvas stretched over curved supports. The canvas offers some protection from sun and rain, but it is not waterproof in the way you imagine. Heavy rain can soak bedding and clothing. Wind can tear the cover. Dust enters everywhere. The wagon creaks constantly. Its iron tires grind against rock. Its wooden joints loosen. Its axles require grease. And despite the popular image of entire families riding comfortably inside, most travelers walk. They walk because the wagon is full. Food, tools, bedding, clothing, cooking equipment, spare parts, weapons, books, seeds, furniture, and sentimental objects consume the available space. They also walk because every additional human body increases the burden on the animals. Oxen are slow, but they are often preferred to horses. They are strong. They are usually less expensive. They can live on rougher grass. They are less attractive to thieves than fine horses, but they are not machines. They suffer from hunger, thirst, heat, cold, injury, disease, and exhaustion. If an ox dies, you cannot simply order another one. If enough animals die, your wagon does not move. And if your wagon does not move, your journey may end wherever the wheels stop. Breakfast is prepared quickly. Perhaps a small fire is built from gathered wood. On much of the prairie, however, trees are scarce. Travelers burn whatever fuel they can find. Sometimes that means dried buffalo dung. To later generations, the idea may sound strange or unpleasant. To a hungry family on the plains, dry fuel is dry fuel. A woman kneels beside the fire, shielding the flame from the wind. Her hands are cracked from washing, cooking, lifting, and exposure. She has already been awake longer than many of the men. She prepared food. She packed bedding. She checked the children. She may have milked a cow, tended someone ill, cleaned a cooking pot, and searched for missing clothing before the wagon captain ever shouted the order to move. The history of the Oregon Trail is often told through explorers, politicians, mountain men, military officers, and wagon leaders. But much of the daily labor belonged to women whose names rarely appeared in official records. They cooked under impossible conditions, they cared for infants while walking, they treated fevers, they gave birth, they buried children, they managed food supplies, repaired clothing, and tried to preserve some sense of family life while the landscape stripped away privacy, comfort, and certainty. Some women wanted to go west. Some saw Oregon as a chance to own land or escape hardship. Others followed husbands who had made the decision for them. Diaries preserve anger, fear, determination, loneliness, and grief. A woman could stand in the middle of an immense prairie, surrounded by sky, and still feel trapped by a decision she had not made. By sunrise, the wagons begin to move. The animals lean into their yokes, wood groans, leather tightens, children are counted. Someone shouts. Someone is missing. Someone always seems to be missing. A boy may have wandered toward the river. A man may still be searching for a loose ox. A woman may be trying to find a cooking spoon that fell into the grass. The wagon train stretches forward in a long, irregular line. There is no smooth acceleration. No engine starts. The entire movement depends on muscle. Human muscle, animal muscle. The pace is slow enough that a healthy adult can walk beside the wagon. 10 miles in a day may feel disappointing. 15 miles may feel successful. 20 miles can be extraordinary, depending on terrain. The trail teaches a brutal lesson. Distance is not measured only in miles. It is measured in damaged feet, broken axles, swollen rivers, sick children, lost animals, and hours of daylight. You begin walking. Within minutes, the romance disappears. The ground is not an even meadow. It is cut by holes, roots, rocks, mud, and hardened ruts left by previous wagons. Your shoes may be poorly fitted. Your socks may be damp. A blister forms, then another. You cannot stop because of a blister. You cannot rest for every pain. If you did, no one would reach Oregon. Dust rises around the wagons. At first it is only an irritation. Then it covers everything. It enters your eyes. It sticks to sweat. It coats your tongue. It settles into food. It finds its way into blankets, flour sacks and wounds. When thousands of people and animals move over the same route, the grass is crushed and the soil breaks apart. On dry days, the wagon train may disappear inside its own cloud. The person beside you becomes a shadow. You breathe what the wheels create, and mixed with the dust is the smell of animals, sweat, smoke, leather, waste, and unwashed bodies. This is not a clean journey. Bathing is difficult, water may be scarce or unsafe, privacy is almost non-existent. Clothing is worn repeatedly. Laundry requires time, fuel, and water that may be needed for drinking. Human waste accumulates near crowded campsites. Dead animals lie beside the route. Carcasses swell in the sun. Bones mark the path. The trail becomes a moving corridor of contamination. And contamination is one of the greatest threats you face. Not wolves, not dramatic attacks, not bandits hiding behind every rock. Disease. Disease kills quietly. It begins with a stomach pain, a headache, a child who refuses breakfast, a man who says he feels weak but continues walking. Then the vomiting begins, then diarrhea, then dehydration. The body loses water faster than it can be replaced. The skin cools, the eyes sink, muscles cramp, the voice weakens. Within hours, a person who appeared healthy at sunrise may be near death. Cholera becomes one of the most feared diseases on the overland trails, especially during major outbreaks in the late 1840s and early 1850s. The bacteria spread through water or food contaminated by human waste. But the emigrants do not understand bacteria. Germ theory has not yet transformed medicine. They may blame bad air, weather, fear, divine judgment, or the smell of decay. They camp near water because they need it. They drink from rivers used by people and animals upstream. They dig shallow wells near crowded camps. They cook with water that looks clear. And then entire families become sick. The speed of cholera terrifies survivors. A person can be walking in the morning and buried by evening. There may be no coffin, no minister, no stone marker. Only a shallow grave beside the trail. Sometimes the family cannot remain long enough to mourn. The wagons must continue. A blanket may become a burial cloth. A wooden board may carry a name. A few stones may be placed over the soil to discourage animals. But many graves disappear. Rain erodes them. Grass returns. Wagon wheels pass nearby. The trail absorbs the dead. You may walk past a grave and wonder who lies beneath it. A child? A mother? A stranger from a wagon train several weeks ahead? You may read a name scratched into wood. You may see no name at all. The number of deaths on the western trails is difficult to know precisely. Records are incomplete. Graves vanished. Diaries were lost. Many travellers died after leaving the main route, and some communities never received clear news of what happened. But tens of thousands did not survive the overland journey. The trail west was not a continuous line of heroic success. It was bordered by absence. Every mile carried stories that ended before Oregon. By mid-morning, the sun is higher. The temperature rises. Your shoulders ache. A child asks when you will arrive. No one answers. The child asks again. Oregon is not a place the child can imagine. It is a word repeated by adults, a word connected to land, houses, fruit trees, and the promise that suffering now will produce comfort later. But children experience the trail differently. Some treat it as adventure. They chase insects, they collect stones, they run beside wagons until exhaustion forces them back. Others become frightened by storms, animals, sickness, and the constant disappearance of familiar people. A child may leave home with grandparents, cousins, and neighbours. Months later, the same child may arrive in Oregon with only part of that group. Accidents are everywhere. Wagons are heavy. Animals are unpredictable. Children fall beneath wheels. A single mistake can crush a leg or kill instantly. Men are injured while handling livestock. Women are burned while cooking. Axes slip. Knives cut. Guns fire unexpectedly. A loaded firearm bouncing inside a wagon is a danger to everyone nearby. The popular image of frontier survival often celebrates weapons, yet firearms on the trail create risks as well as protection. Travelers shoot themselves while cleaning guns. They accidentally shoot companions. Children find loaded pistols. Hunters fire without seeing who stands beyond the target. An injury that would be survivable today can become fatal. There are no emergency rooms, no antibiotics, no sterile operating theatres. A deep cut may become infected. A broken bone may heal badly. A crushed hand may never recover. A toothache can become an abscess. A minor burn can turn poisonous. Medical care depends on whatever knowledge, instruments, and medicines happen to be available. Some wagon trains include a physician. Many do not. Even trained doctors are limited by the medical understanding of the time. Treatments may include bleeding, purging, opium, alcohol, mercury compounds, herbal remedies, or other substances that can be ineffective or dangerous. A medicine chest gives comfort. It does not guarantee survival. You continue walking. The landscape appears endless. The plains do not rise dramatically around you, they extend. That extension becomes psychologically overwhelming. Day after day, the horizon seems unchanged. The wagon moves, but the world does not. You begin to understand why distance can break the mind. A mountain is difficult because it stands before you. A prairie is difficult because it refuses to end. The journey begins with organization. Wagon trains elect leaders or captains. Rules are discussed. Travel schedules are established. Responsibilities are divided. Some groups create written agreements to manage disputes, property, watch duties, and decision-making. The wagon train is a temporary moving society. It needs law because conflict travels with it. People argue about speed. They argue about campsites. They argue about missing animals, shared labour, stolen food, dangerous behaviour, and whether to wait for the sick. A family with strong animals may want to move faster. A family with a broken wagon may beg the group to stop. Every delay threatens the entire train. Every refusal to help threatens the idea of community. At first, cooperation may seem natural. Everyone is travelling toward the same destination. But hardship exposes differences. Wealth matters. A well-supplied family can replace equipment, trade for food, and survive delays. A poor family may begin the journey with barely enough. When supplies run low, desperation grows. A traveller may abandon furniture, tools, books, clothing, and treasured possessions beside the trail. The route becomes scattered with discarded objects. Chairs, trunks, stoves, farm equipment, feather beds, iron tools. Everything that seemed necessary in Missouri becomes unbearable weight on a steep hill. The trail forces families to decide what their past is worth. A woman may watch a chest inherited from her mother thrown from the wagon. A man may abandon tools he expected to use on his new farm. A child may lose a toy because the oxen cannot pull another unnecessary pound. Survival reduces life to essentials: food, water, shelter, strength, luck. By late morning, one of the wagons stops. The line slows behind it. An axle has cracked. This is the sound every traveller fears. The journey depends on wood, iron, leather, and constant improvisation. A broken wagon cannot be repaired with hope. Spare parts are heavy, but not carrying them is dangerous. Men gather around the damage. Someone brings tools. Someone suggests binding the crack. Someone searches for suitable timber. If there is a blacksmith nearby, the family is fortunate. At forts and trading posts, repairs may be available, but prices can be high. Far from those places, the emigrants must become mechanics. They lift the wagon. They remove the wheel. They curse the road. The sun continues moving. Every hour lost matters. The Oregon Trail is controlled by the calendar. Leave too early, and spring mud or flooded rivers may stop you. Leave too late, and winter may trap you in the mountains. The emigrants must travel after grass begins growing strongly enough to feed livestock, but early enough to cross the western ranges before heavy snow. This narrow seasonal window governs everything. A delay that seems harmless in May can become deadly in October. The fear of snow is always ahead. Even on a hot afternoon, winter waits in the distance. The wagon is repaired as well as possible. The train moves again. You pass a pile of household goods abandoned by someone ahead. The objects are weathered but recent. A broken chair, a metal pot, a mattress opened by animals, a book swollen by rain. You wonder what happened to the people who left them. Did they lighten the wagon and continue? Did their animals die? Did the family split apart? Did someone die, leaving possessions that no longer mattered? The trail rarely explains itself. It offers evidence without conclusions. At noon, the train stops briefly. Animals need rest. People need food. But the pause cannot be long. A full meal takes time. Time requires daylight. Daylight is needed for distance. Distance is needed for survival. Perhaps you eat cold bacon and bread. Perhaps beans cooked the night before. Perhaps coffee if supplies remain. Coffee becomes more than a drink. It is warmth, habit, and memory. The smell connects the camp to the home left behind. But even coffee depends on water, and water dominates the journey. Too little water, and you die. Too much water in the wrong place, and you may also die. Rivers are obstacles, resources, highways, boundaries, and traps. Some are shallow enough to ford. Others require ferries, rafts, or dangerous improvisation. A river that looks calm may hide a strong current. A wagon entering deep water may float, tip, or fill. Oxen may panic. People may drown while trying to save supplies. Children can disappear beneath muddy water in seconds. At major crossings, commercial ferries sometimes operate. Entrepreneurs recognize that fear can be profitable. A safe crossing has value. But ferries cost money, and waiting lines can be long during peak migration. Some emigrants build rafts. Others seal wagon beds in the hope that they will float. They raise supplies above the expected waterline. They attach ropes. They guide animals into the current. Every crossing becomes a judgment. Is the water too high? Is the current too fast? Should the wagon be unloaded? Can the family afford the ferry? Should they wait? Will waiting destroy the schedule? The Platte River becomes one of the great guides west. Wide, shallow, and divided into channels, it leads emigrants across much of the Central Plains. Travellers sometimes describe it as broad and muddy, a river that seems impressive from a distance, but may be surprisingly shallow in places. Yet shallow does not mean harmless. Its banks can be difficult. Its channels shift. Sandbars trap wheels. Storms raise water. And the river corridor attracts not only emigrants but animals, traders, military patrols, and indigenous communities. For thousands of migrants, the Platte is both companion and warning. It points west. It also carries contamination. Near heavily used campsites, clean water becomes increasingly difficult to find. You drink because you must. You hope because you have no alternative. In the afternoon, clouds gather. On the plains, weather can move with terrifying speed. The horizon darkens. Wind bends the grass. The wagon covers snap violently. A storm that appeared distant suddenly surrounds the train. Lightning crosses the sky. Thunder shakes the animals. Rain turns dust into mud. The temperature drops. Oxen pull against their yokes. Horses panic. Families rush to secure canvas, tools, and bedding. The wagons offer limited shelter. Water leaks through seams. Wind drives rain sideways. Children cry. Adults shout instructions that vanish in the storm. A bolt of lightning strikes the prairie. Fire may follow if the grass is dry. At other times, hail becomes the threat. Large stones of ice strike canvas, animals, and people. There is nowhere to hide. The world that seemed empty becomes violently alive. After the storm, the trail may be transformed. Ruts fill with water. Mud grips the wheels. Streams rise. Clothing is soaked. Firewood is wet. The temperature may fall sharply after sunset. Hypothermia does not require a mountain blizzard. A wet, exhausted traveller exposed to cold wind can become dangerously chilled. The emigrants carry blankets, but blankets become useless when soaked. The wagon contains shelter, but every person cannot always fit comfortably inside. Some sleep beneath wagons, some sleep in tents, some sleep on the ground under open sky. After days of rain, everything feels damp. Mold grows, food spoils, leather rots, tempers worsen. You may imagine the Oregon Trail as months of golden sunsets. In reality, much of it is maintenance performed in bad weather. Drying, mending, greasing, searching, digging, lifting, pulling, waiting. The storm passes. The train moves slowly through mud. Your shoes grow heavier with every step. A wheel sinks. Men push. Women carry children around the obstruction. Oxen strain until their bodies tremble. The wagon rises from the mud with a wet, sucking sound. Then the next wagon becomes stuck in the same place. The entire train repeats the effort. Progress is measured in yards. This is one reason you might not survive a single day. The trail does not need one great catastrophe. It can defeat you through accumulation. A blister, a wet blanket, a weak animal, a missing cup, a cracked wheel, a fever, a delayed start, a poor crossing. Each problem alone appears manageable. Together, they create disaster. By late afternoon, the storm clouds break. Sunlight returns, turning the wet prairie bright. For a moment, the scene is beautiful. The wagons cast long shadows. Birds rise from the grass. The sky opens above you with a scale impossible to describe to anyone who has not seen it. This beauty is real. The emigrants often record wonder as well as fear. They admire wildflowers. They watch enormous herds of bison. They describe rock formations, rivers, mountains, and sunsets. Children play near camps. Young people form friendships. Couples meet and sometimes marry during the journey. Songs are sung, stories are shared, religious services are held, birthdays are remembered. The trail is not uninterrupted misery. Human beings create normal life wherever they can. That may be one of the most extraordinary parts of the story. Even in danger, people laugh. Even after burial, they cook dinner. Even when the future is uncertain, someone tells a joke beside the fire. Survival requires more than food. It requires the ability to imagine tomorrow. But the landscape you admire is not untouched. The arrival of wagon trains changes it. Livestock consume grass near the route. Travellers cut timber. They hunt game. They leave waste. They spread disease. They occupy springs and riverbanks. The growing traffic intensifies conflict over resources. Early emigrants sometimes write of peaceful trade and assistance from indigenous people. Native guides show routes, help recover animals, provide food, operate ferries, and share knowledge. Yet later American memory often replaces these complicated encounters with a simple story of constant threat. That story served a purpose. It portrayed settlers as innocent pioneers moving through a hostile wilderness. It concealed the deeper reality that indigenous nations were watching increasing numbers of outsiders cross their homelands, damage resources, bring epidemics, establish forts, demand roads, and eventually claim permanent control. Violence did occur. People on all sides were killed. But the greatest destructive force moving west was not a wave of random attacks on wagon trains. It was expansion backed by the United States government. In the 1840s, the nation's political imagination turns aggressively toward the Pacific. The phrase "manifest destiny" captures the belief that American expansion across the continent is natural, inevitable, or divinely justified. This idea transforms migration into a national mission. It also turns other people's homes into obstacles. The Oregon Country is jointly occupied for years by Britain and the United States, while the Hudson's Bay Company maintains powerful commercial networks in the region. American settlers moving west strengthen the United States' claim. Wagons become political instruments. Families become evidence. A cabin in the Willamette Valley is not merely a home, it is an argument about sovereignty. The Oregon Treaty of 1846 establishes the boundary between the United States and British territory along the 49th parallel in much of the Pacific Northwest. To American settlers, the agreement seems to confirm the success of migration. To Indigenous nations, no distant diplomatic line can explain the transformation already underway. Their land has been negotiated by foreign powers that do not truly own it. The wagon train continues. You are part of this transformation whether you understand it or not. You may see yourself as a farmer seeking land. The government sees settlement. Merchants see customers. Politicians see territory. Missionaries see souls. Military officers see routes and strategic positions. Indigenous communities see pressure that will not stop. As the afternoon fades, the wagon captain searches for a campsite. A good camp needs water, grass, fuel, and defensible organisation. But the best sites are often already damaged by previous travellers. Grass may be gone, wood may be scarce, water may be polluted. The train chooses what is available. Wagons are arranged, animals are unyoked. Some are allowed to graze, others must be guarded. Losing livestock at night is a constant fear. Animals wander, they become frightened, they are stolen, they simply disappear into darkness. Men take turns on watch. The workday does not end when the wagons stop. Camp must be built, fires started, water carried, meals prepared, repairs completed, animals checked, children cleaned, the sick treated, clothing mended, bodies buried if someone died during the day. There is no wall between private grief and public necessity. A mother may mourn while preparing food. A father may dig a grave and then repair a harness. A child may watch adults lower a body into the earth before being told to gather wood. The trail leaves little room for the rituals people once believed essential. Funerals are shortened. Births occur without privacy. Arguments happen within hearing of everyone. Marriage is tested under constant observation. Families discover who they are when there is nowhere to hide. As darkness approaches, a man returns from hunting. Perhaps he carries a rabbit, perhaps an antelope, perhaps nothing. Hunting on the trail is often less productive than later legend suggests. Some men waste time and ammunition chasing game. The great bison herds impress travelers, but reckless shooting can injure hunters, scatter animals, or produce more meat than a family can preserve. Without refrigeration, fresh meat spoils quickly. A successful hunt may provide temporary abundance. It cannot replace careful planning, and wildlife becomes less plentiful near heavily travelled sections. The trail consumes what it reaches. Dinner is eaten near the fire. The food is simple. No one complains loudly, because complaining changes nothing. The stars emerge. Far from cities, the night sky is immense. For a few minutes, the journey seems almost peaceful. Then someone notices that an ox is missing. Men take lanterns and search. Darkness on the prairie is not like darkness at home. There are no street lights, no distant buildings, no familiar fence lines. The land becomes featureless. A person can become lost only a short distance from camp. The searchers call out. An answer comes from the wrong direction, or perhaps no answer comes. If the animal is not found, tomorrow's burden becomes greater. The wagon may need to be redistributed. Supplies may be abandoned. Another family may lend an ox, creating debt and resentment. One missing animal can alter the fate of several people. You lie down to sleep. Your body aches. Your clothes are still damp. The ground is cold. Mosquitoes gather near the river. In some regions, insects become a constant torment. They bite exposed skin. They disturb sleep. They attack animals. Flies gather near food, waste, wounds, and carcasses. Sanitation is difficult enough without insects carrying contamination from one place to another. A baby begins crying. Someone nearby is vomiting. A man coughs violently. The oxen shift in the darkness. You close your eyes. But sleep does not come easily. You think about the miles travelled, perhaps 12. You think about the miles remaining, perhaps more than 1,000. This was one day, only one, and the trail will ask you to repeat it again tomorrow. Then again. Then again. The true danger of the Oregon Trail is repetition. Anyone can imagine surviving a storm. The harder question is whether you can survive 90 storms, 100 bad nights, months of walking, and the steady loss of strength. The trail does not test courage once. It tests endurance continuously. The next morning begins before sunrise. The missing ox has not returned. The family owning it must make a decision. They can search longer and fall behind. They can abandon part of their load. They can ask for help. Pride becomes dangerous. So does generosity. A wagon train that stops for every problem may fail to reach the mountains before winter. A wagon train that refuses help may destroy its own members. These choices are not made calmly. They are made by exhausted people who know that the season is moving. At the Missouri River, many travelers had imagined the route as a shared adventure. Weeks later, the train may split into smaller groups. Some believe the captain is too cautious. Others think he is reckless. Rumors of shortcuts spread. A stranger claims there is better grass to the south. A trader says the river can be crossed farther upstream. A guidebook recommends a path that no one in the group has actually seen. This is how disasters begin. Not always with ignorance, sometimes with confidence. The American West is filled with promoters. Men publish guides, describe routes, sell land, recommend ferries, and promise opportunity. Some are honest, some are mistaken, some are dangerous. A shortcut can save days. It can also lead wagons into desert, canyon, mud, or mountains. The Donner Party, though bound primarily for California and following branches of the broader overland trail system, becomes the most infamous example of the dangers created by delay, poor information, internal conflict, and a disastrous cut-off. In 1846, the group follows a route promoted as a faster path. The cut-off requires exhausting travel through the Wasatch Mountains and across the Great Salt Lake Desert. Time is lost, animals weaken, supplies shrink, conflict grows. When the emigrants reach the Sierra Nevada, snow traps them. The disaster later becomes famous for cannibalism, but that single horrifying detail can obscure the deeper warning. They were not defeated by one mistake. They were defeated by a chain of decisions, delays, environmental challenges, misinformation, and bad timing. The Oregon Trail contains the same ingredients. Every traveler moves under the threat of becoming another cautionary story. As the route follows the Platte westward, landmarks begin to rise. Courthouse Rock, Jail Rock, Chimney Rock, Scott's Bluff. These formations are more than scenery. They measure progress. A family may have heard about Chimney Rock months before seeing it. When its narrow spire finally appears, excitement spreads through the train. People carve names into stone or nearby cliffs. They want to leave evidence that they passed. The desire is deeply human. The landscape is enormous. The journey makes individuals feel temporary. A name carved into rock says, "I was here. I endured this far. Perhaps someone will remember me." At places such as Register Cliff, emigrants inscribe names, dates, and hometowns. Some survive to reach Oregon. Some do not. Their markings remain even when their stories vanish. Today, visitors can stand before those names and feel the distance between memory and life. The letters are still visible. The voices are gone. Fort Laramie becomes one of the most important landmarks on the trail. Originally connected to the fur trade and later purchased by the United States Army, the fort serves as a place of supply, repair, information, and temporary security. For emigrants, arriving at a fort can feel like returning briefly to civilization. There may be blacksmiths, traders, soldiers, mail, and news. But forts are not simply shelters. They are also symbols of expanding federal power. The army builds and occupies posts to protect routes, support migration, regulate movement, and assert control. Military presence increases as relations between settlers and indigenous nations deteriorate under the pressure of migration. The Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851 attempts to establish boundaries among native nations and guarantee passage for emigrants. The agreement reflects American desire to make movement west safer and more predictable. But the boundaries often fail to match native patterns of land use, and the promises of the United States prove unreliable. As more settlers cross and occupy the West, treaty commitments weaken. The government that asks for peaceful passage becomes the government that demands land. From an emigrant perspective, the fort may represent protection. From a native perspective, it may represent permanence. The wagons are no longer simply passing through, they are creating the infrastructure of conquest. Beyond Fort Laramie, the land rises. The journey becomes more difficult. Oxen that seem strong on the plains begin to struggle. Wagons must climb grades that appear impossible. Travelers double-team animals, attaching extra oxen to pull one wagon at a time. Men push from behind. Women and children walk. Wheels slip. Ropes tighten. A wagon can roll backward. An animal can fall beneath the load. At steep descents, the danger changes. Chains or ropes may be used to slow wagons. Wheels are locked or dragged. A driver who loses control can watch the wagon accelerate downhill, crushing animals or throwing cargo into a ravine. The mountains demand strength that the journey has already taken away. By the time emigrants reach the higher country, they are not the people who left Missouri. They are thinner, sunburned, scarred. Their clothing is worn. Their animals are weaker. Their food supplies are lower. The trail becomes hardest when their ability to meet it is smallest. South Pass offers a relatively broad route across the Continental Divide. Unlike the dramatic narrow mountain gateway imagined by many travelers, it can appear surprisingly open. But its historical importance is enormous. It provides a practical crossing through the Rocky Mountains for wagons. For traders, migrants, missionaries, and military planners, South Pass becomes one of the keys to continental movement. Standing there, an emigrant may feel triumph. The highest symbolic barrier has been crossed. The waters now flow toward the Pacific. But Oregon is still far away. Crossing the divide does not mean the danger is over. It means the journey has entered another phase. West of South Pass, decisions multiply. Routes divide toward Oregon, California, and Utah. Trading posts such as Fort Bridger provide supplies and information. Prices may be shocking. Merchants understand scarcity. A pound of food or a replacement part is worth whatever desperation allows. Families who began with money may now have little. Families without money trade possessions, a weapon, a tool, clothing, an animal. The economy of the trail rewards foresight, but foresight is limited by uncertainty. No one knows exactly which item will become essential next week. A spare axle may seem like dead weight until the original breaks. An extra sack of flour may save a family or kill an ox through added burden. Every object carries two possibilities: security and weight. The trail west of the divide crosses dry country, where water and grass become increasingly uncertain. The high plains and desert basins can appear lifeless. Heat reflects from pale earth. Dust coats the mouth. Animals smell water before people see it. At Alkali Springs, The water may be dangerous. Livestock drink and become sick. Some collapse. Travelers learn that not all water saves. Desert travel may require moving at night or early morning. Wagons spread out. The road is marked by dead animals and discarded goods. A family may begin a dry crossing confident in its barrels, only to discover a leak. The water level drops. Rations tighten. Children beg for more. Parents say no. Thirst changes behaviour. People become irritable, confused and weak. The tongue swells, the skin dries, walking slows. But stopping in the desert does not solve thirst. You move because water is ahead. You hope because hope is lighter than panic. At rivers such as the Snake, the route becomes physically demanding again. The Snake River country contains steep banks, rough ground, and difficult crossings. Travellers may follow the river, yet remain unable to reach its water safely. Canyons turn a nearby resource into a distant one. Routes climb and descend. Wagons break. Animals lose shoes or injure hooves. A lame ox slows the entire team. The emigrants inspect feet, shoulders, and necks for sores. Yokes rub skin raw. Flies gather around wounds. An animal that cannot pull may be abandoned. This is one of the most painful realities of the trail. People depend on animals, but often drive them beyond survival. Oxen carry the dream of Oregon until their bodies fail. Then they are left beside the road. Their bones become mile markers. At night, wolves or scavengers approach carcasses. The sound unsettles the camp. Yet wolves rarely represent the constant deadly menace portrayed in later fiction. The greater danger is still exhaustion, accident, disease, weather, and human miscalculation. Fear, however, does not follow statistics. A distant howl can terrify a child more than contaminated water. A rumour of an attack can spread faster than illness. The wagon train may circle defensively, post extra guards, and prepare weapons. The famous image of wagons arranged in a perfect circle belongs partly to later mythology. Wagons could be arranged for protection or livestock management, but terrain and circumstance often made neat formations impractical. The real camps were messy, people argued, animals wandered, fires smoked, children cried. Nothing looked like a painting. Encounters with indigenous communities vary widely. Some are brief exchanges. Salmon, horses, vegetables, hides or services are traded for clothing, tools, metal goods or money. Native people sometimes guide emigrants through difficult terrain or help them cross rivers. Some emigrants respond with respect and gratitude. Others behave with arrogance, fear, or violence. They enter villages without understanding local customs. They steal. They damage crops. They allow livestock to consume food resources. They bring diseases against which native communities have little immunity. Measles, smallpox, influenza, and other illnesses devastate populations across the West. The emigrants may fear visible conflict. Indigenous people have reason to fear invisible infection. In 1847, violence at the Whitman Mission near present-day Walla Walla reveals the depth of tension, misunderstanding, and tragedy. Marcus and Narcissa Whitman had established a Protestant mission among the Cayuse in the 1830s. The mission later became connected to overland migration, providing assistance to travellers. But cultural conflict deepened. The Whitmans' efforts at conversion and settlement disrupted existing relationships. Then a measles epidemic struck. Many Cayuse died, especially children, while more white settlers survived. Some Cayuse concluded that Marcus Whitman, who practiced medicine, was responsible or had failed them in a way that demanded punishment according to their understanding of accountability. In November 1847, Cayuse men killed Marcus and Narcissa Whitman and others at the mission. The event shocked American settlers and led to the Cayuse War. In later retellings, the Whitmans were often transformed into simple martyrs of civilization. The full story is more complicated. It includes missionary ambition, cultural misunderstanding, epidemic disease, settler pressure, grief, and a violent collision between different worlds. For emigrants moving through the region, The incident becomes part of a growing narrative of danger. For the Cayuse, it occurs amid catastrophic population loss and expanding invasion. History changes depending on who is allowed to speak. By the time many travelers reach the Columbia River region, summer is ending. The mountains ahead carry snow. The route toward the Willamette Valley remains difficult. Before the Barlow Road opened in the 1840s, many emigrants faced the dangerous Columbia River passage. At the Dalles, wagons might be dismantled or loaded onto rafts and boats. Families travel downriver through currents, rocks, wind, and rapids. Animals may be driven overland while people and possessions move by water. The river is beautiful and terrifying. A raft, overloaded with a family's entire future, can strike a rock. A sudden gust can overturn a boat. Supplies disappear. People drown within sight of shore. The Columbia is not the peaceful finish imagined during the first days in Missouri. It is one final test. Later, the Barlow Road provides an overland alternative around the south side of Mount Hood. It is a toll road, and it is not easy. Wagons climb through forest and descend steep slopes. Travelers use ropes to lower wagons down dangerous grades. Mud, trees, rain, and snow make the route exhausting. The sight of Mount Hood may inspire wonder, but the mountain also warns that winter is close. The emigrants smell forests after months of plains and desert. The landscape becomes green. Rain returns. The destination seems near. This is when people become careless. After surviving most of the continent, they believe the worst is over. But final miles can still kill. Animals are weak. People are sick. Supplies are nearly gone. Cold rain lowers body temperature. Rivers flood. A family can endure 2,000 miles and lose someone within days of the valley. Arrival does not erase the journey. When emigrants finally enter the Willamette Valley, the promised land may not match the dream. The valley is fertile, but a farm does not build itself. Land must be claimed, trees cleared, shelter constructed, food planted, winter survived. New arrivals may live temporarily with earlier settlers, camp in rough conditions, or build small cabins before heavy weather. They are exhausted and often poor. The wagon that carried them west may become part of the first shelter. Canvas becomes roofing. Crates become furniture. Tools are worn. Clothing is torn. The family has reached Oregon. Now it must survive Oregon. The American government encourages settlement through land policies. The Donation Land Claim Act of 1850 grants land to qualifying white settlers in Oregon Territory, with provisions that reward married couples by recognizing claims connected to both husband and wife. To migrants struggling for property, the law appears generous, but the land is not unowned. Federal policy converts indigenous territory into settler property. Treaties, removals, and war follow. The dream of free land depends on making someone else's land available. It also depends on racial exclusion. Oregon's early political culture includes laws intended to exclude black people. The territory and later state develop a reputation as a free region without slavery, but freedom does not mean equality. Some white settlers oppose slavery while also seeking to prevent black settlement. This contradiction reveals the limits of the pioneer ideal. A family could cross the continent seeking liberty while supporting laws that denied opportunity to others. The West was not created outside American racism. It carried that racism forward. Black pioneers did travel west. Some came as free people. Others were brought while enslaved or held in conditions that violated the developing laws of the region. Their stories challenge the image of the Oregon Trail as an exclusively white movement, even though white settlement dominated the migration and political system. People of mixed ancestry, French-Canadian families, native communities, Hawaiian workers associated with the fur trade, missionaries, traders, and migrants from many backgrounds contributed to the Pacific Northwest. The region was never as culturally simple as later mythology suggested. The word pioneer often produces a single image: a white family, a covered wagon, a father with a rifle, a mother holding a child. The actual West contains many more lives. The myth narrows history because a narrow history is easier to celebrate. The real story is harder. It contains courage and cruelty, hope and theft, community and exclusion, survival and destruction. Why would you fail to survive one day on the Oregon Trail? Perhaps because you are not prepared for the physical labor. Modern life protects the body from many constant demands. You sit, you ride, you turn a handle and clean water appears. You open a package and food is safe. You sleep beneath a roof that does not move. On the trail, nearly every comfort must be created by effort. Water must be found and carried. Fire must be built. Food must be protected and cooked. Shelter must be repaired. Animals must be managed. Clothing must be mended. Waste must be handled. Every day is a chain of tasks, and the failure of one task creates the next crisis. Perhaps you would fail because you expect rescue. On the Oregon Trail, help may be days away. A military fort might exist along the route, but it is not an emergency service. A neighbouring wagon may assist, but that family has limited supplies. A doctor may be present, but medicine is primitive. A ferry may operate, but only at one crossing. There is no system designed to save you. You are part of the system. If the wheel breaks, you repair it. If someone disappears, you search. If a person dies, you bury them. Perhaps you would fail because you misunderstand danger. You fear wolves and ignore water. You fear Indigenous warriors and ignore your loaded gun. You fear mountains and ignore diarrhea. You fear a dramatic death while ordinary infection enters a blister. The trail punishes misplaced attention. The greatest threats often look harmless at first. A cup of water, a small cut, a tired ox, a dark cloud, a few hours of delay. Perhaps you would fail because you believe strength is individual. The mythology of the frontier celebrates self-reliance, but almost no one survives the trail alone. Families depend on neighbours. Wagons depend on teams. Children depend on adults. Adults depend on animals. Travellers depend on native knowledge, commercial posts, ferries, guides, and routes created by generations of earlier movement. Even the most independent emigrant exists inside a network. The frontier hero standing alone is largely a later invention. Real survival is cooperative. The strongest person in camp still needs someone to hold the rope. Perhaps you would fail because you carry too much. Modern identity is tied to possessions. You imagine bringing furniture, books, tools, cookware, clothing, and objects that make a house feel like home. Then the first major hill arrives. The oxen stop. The wagon does not move. You must choose. A family Bible, a chest, a stove, a bed. The trail asks whether memory weighs more than flour. Thousands of emigrants answer by throwing their past onto the ground. Perhaps you would fail because you carry too little. The opposite mistake is equally dangerous. No spare part, not enough food, no warm clothing, no medicine, no rope strong enough for a steep descent. The ideal wagon contains exactly what will be needed and nothing unnecessary, but no one knows the future. Preparation is an attempt to predict disaster. The trail always creates a disaster you did not predict. Perhaps you would fail because you cannot tolerate uncertainty. You do not know where you will sleep tonight. You do not know whether the river is crossable. You do not know if the child's fever will break. You do not know if grass will be available tomorrow. You do not know whether a rumour is true. You do not know whether the snow has begun in the mountains. Modern people live with uncertainty, but much of it is hidden behind institutions. On the trail, uncertainty is visible. It walks beside you. Perhaps you would fail because you cannot continue after grief. A person dies. The wagon train waits only a short time. You bury them. Then someone says it is time to move. The wheels turn. The grave becomes smaller behind you. There is no period of withdrawal, no protected space for mourning. The work continues because everyone still alive depends on it. To survive, you must carry grief and a water bucket at the same time. Some immigrants become emotionally hardened. Others write constantly in diaries, preserving sorrow in ink because they cannot stop to express it. A diary entry may contain only a few words, a name, an age, a sentence saying that someone died and was buried. The brevity does not mean the grief was small, it means the day was still moving. Perhaps you would fail because you believe arrival will justify everything. The promise of Oregon gives suffering a purpose, but not every dream survives the destination. Some settlers find success. They build farms, businesses, churches, towns, and political institutions. Others face debt, isolation, poor land, illness, conflict, and disappointment. Some move again. The frontier is full of people searching for the place where life will finally become easier. California, Oregon, Washington, a new valley, a new town. The journey west does not cure restlessness, it relocates it. For many families, however, the land opportunity is real. They acquire acreage impossible to obtain in the east. Children grow up with property. Communities expand. Roads, schools, mills, and markets appear. The suffering of the journey becomes a foundational family story. Grandparents tell younger generations how the river nearly took the wagon, how an ox died in the desert, how snow began near the mountains, how a baby was born under canvas. Memory transforms hardship. What felt terrifying becomes heroic. What felt dirty becomes simple. What felt uncertain becomes inevitable. The family survived, so the journey begins to appear destined. This is how mythology grows. Survivors tell the story. The dead remain beside the trail. The Oregon Trail later becomes one of the central legends of the United States. Paintings show clean wagons against glowing sunsets. Films present brave families moving through majestic landscapes. Schoolbooks describe pioneers carrying civilization westward. Children play games in which they choose supplies, cross rivers, and die of dysentery. The phrase, "You have died of dysentery," becomes a joke for generations far removed from the reality. Humor makes history approachable, but behind the joke is a body losing water in a filthy camp, while a family watches helplessly. The digital trail can be restarted. The real one could not. The modern fascination with the Oregon Trail reveals a national desire to imagine hardship from safety. We want to test ourselves against the past. Would we choose enough food? Would we repair the axle? Would we cross the river? Would we survive? But these questions can become a form of vanity. The emigrants did not know they were participating in a famous story. They did not see themselves in a museum. They were tired people trying to reach the next campsite. Their suffering was not entertainment. Their courage was not guaranteed. And survival did not make every decision just. To understand the Oregon Trail honestly, we must hold several truths at once. The emigrants showed extraordinary endurance. Many risked everything for their families. Women performed relentless labor under brutal conditions. Children endured fear and loss. Communities cooperated in moments of crisis. People crossed a continent using wood, iron, animals, memory, and hope. That achievement is real. So is the cost. The migration accelerated the dispossession of indigenous nations. It spread disease. It damaged resources. It supported American territorial expansion. It helped create political systems that privileged white settlement and excluded others. The same wagon could carry love for a family and participate in the destruction of another family's homeland. History is uncomfortable because human beings are complicated. The pioneer is not only hero or villain. The pioneer is a person moving inside a powerful system, sometimes questioning it, often benefiting from it, rarely seeing the full consequences. The Oregon Trail remains visible today. In some places, wagon ruts still cut through the earth. They are shallow now. Grass surrounds them. Roads and cities lie nearby. A visitor can stand inside the old track and imagine the sound of wheels. The landscape is quieter than it was during migration seasons. No shouting, no oxen, no children walking barefoot beside wagons. Only wind. At Chimney Rock, Scotts Bluff, South Pass, Fort Laramie, and other preserved sites, the route can still be traced. Museums display tools, wagon parts, clothing, diaries, and maps. Historic markers identify crossings and camps. Yet the most powerful remains are often the least dramatic. A name carved into stone, a depression in the ground, a grave without a marker, a list of supplies, a woman's diary describing rain, a child's memory of leaving a sibling behind. These fragments resist the polished legend. They return the trail to human scale. Imagine the first morning again, the camp before sunrise, the canvas moving in the wind, the oxen breathing in darkness. You wake with pain in your back. Your shoes are damp. Someone nearby is sick. A wheel needs repair. The nearest reliable help is far away. You have already walked hundreds of miles. You still have hundreds more. There is no guarantee that the route ahead is open. No guarantee that the river is low. No guarantee that your food will last. No guarantee that the mountains will remain free of snow. You rise anyway. That is the central act of the Oregon Trail. Not the dramatic river crossing, not the attack imagined in later fiction, not the moment of arrival, the act of rising, again and again, after fear, after exhaustion, after burial, after failure. People survive enormous journeys by reducing them to mornings. Stand up, light the fire, find the animals, pack the wagon, walk west. The lesson is not that people in the past were naturally tougher than people today. Their bodies felt pain as ours do. They feared death. They became discouraged. They complained. They made reckless decisions. They suffered from anxiety, grief, anger, jealousy, and despair. They were not a different species of human. Circumstance demanded more of them, and many could not meet that demand. Those who survived often did so through experience, cooperation, luck, and the sacrifices of others. We should be careful when admiring toughness. Hardship does not automatically create virtue. Sometimes it creates cruelty. Sometimes it exposes courage. Sometimes it does both in the same person. A desperate traveller may share food with a stranger one day and refuse help the next. A family may depend on Indigenous assistance while supporting policies that seize Indigenous land. A man may risk his life saving a child from a river and later abandon an injured animal without hesitation. Survival narrows morality, but it also creates moments of extraordinary generosity. People divide their last flour. They adopt orphaned children. They remain with the sick even when the wagon train moves on. They return into dangerous water to save strangers. They repair a neighbour's wagon under freezing rain. The trail reveals the entire range of human behaviour because it removes the distance between choice and consequence. Today, the distance between us and consequence has grown. Food arrives without showing the field. Water arrives without showing the river. Land is purchased without showing the people removed from it generations before. Roads cross mountains without revealing the labour that made passage possible. A modern traveller can follow sections of the Oregon Trail in a climate-controlled vehicle, guided by satellite navigation, carrying more medical knowledge in a phone than an entire wagon train possessed. The journey that once consumed half a year becomes a vacation route. But speed can hide history. The highway crosses the same plains, the river still moves, snow still falls in the mountains, wind still strikes the grass. The landscape remembers even when we do not. At a rest stop, you may stand a few miles from where a family buried a child. At a bridge, you may cross in seconds where emigrants waited days for the water to fall. At a town, you may buy food near the site of an old fort, ferry, trading post, or native village. The past is not gone. It has been covered by convenience. To uncover it, we must slow down. We must imagine distance at walking speed. At walking speed, the continent becomes enormous again. At walking speed, every river matters. At walking speed, weather becomes personal. At walking speed, the line between survival and death may be the condition of one animal. The Oregon Trail is often described as a path to the future. For the emigrants, it was also a long separation from the past. Every mile weakened connections to home. Letters took months, news arrived late. Family members left behind might never be seen again. When a wagon crossed the Missouri River, the departure could be permanent. There were no easy return flights, no video calls, no certainty that a letter reached its destination. A mother watched an adult child disappear west and understood that goodbye might truly mean forever. Migration created opportunity by creating absence. The communities of Oregon were built from people missing someone far away. Homesickness traveled in every wagon. A familiar song could bring tears. A recipe could preserve a vanished kitchen. A family name carved into a rock could connect a person to a place thousands of miles behind them. The emigrants moved toward Oregon while carrying Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, New England, Europe, and many other origins in memory. The West was not born empty. It was assembled from displaced pieces of other places, and beneath those new communities remained older worlds, indigenous trade routes, fishing places, burial grounds, seasonal camps, sacred sites, village locations. The American road did not erase them immediately, but it attempted to overwrite them. Even the names used by settlers changed how the landscape was understood. A place known through generations of native memory became a landmark in an emigrant guidebook. A river became a crossing. A valley became available land. A mountain became an obstacle. Language prepared the ground for possession. The consequences continued long after the wagon era ended. Railroads eventually transformed Western migration. The journey became faster. Towns expanded. Agriculture intensified. Mining, logging, and industry reshaped the environment. Federal campaigns confined many native nations to reservations. Treaties were broken or rewritten. Children were taken to boarding schools designed to suppress indigenous languages and cultures. The covered wagon disappeared from daily life, but remained powerful as a symbol. It represented national growth, while hiding the people forced aside by that growth. Symbols simplify because nations prefer clear stories. A wagon moving towards sunset looks like progress. The people standing beyond the edge of the painting complicate the image. An honest documentary must widen the frame. Inside the wagon, a woman protects her child from rain. Beside the wagon, an ox bleeds beneath a yoke. Ahead of the wagon, a trader waits at a fort. Behind it, a grave disappears in grass. Beyond the hill, a native family watches another column of settlers enter its homeland. In Washington, politicians debate territory. In Oregon, settlers measure claims. At a mission, disease spreads. At a river, a ferryman collects payment. At a mountain pass, snow begins. All these scenes belong to the same story. That is why the Oregon Trail remains important. It is not merely a tale of travel. It is a compressed history of the United States. Ambition, mobility, family, technology, faith, capitalism, expansion, racism, violence, community, myth. The trail carries all of them west, and it asks a question that still matters. What do people believe they are entitled to endure, take, or destroy in the name of a better future? The emigrants believed land could transform their lives. Many were correct, but transformation always has a price. Some paid with labour, some with health, some with life. Others paid without choosing the transaction at all. Indigenous nations lost territory and population. Black Americans faced exclusion from communities built around freedom for whites. Animals were consumed by the journey. Land and water were altered by mass movement. The future arrived unevenly. For some, it brought ownership. For others, removal. The phrase, "you couldn't survive one day," sounds like a challenge. It invites the viewer to imagine personal weakness. Could you walk 15 miles? Could you drink questionable water? Could you sleep in mud? Could you watch an ox die? Could you cross a river without a bridge? Could you bury someone before breakfast and continue moving? Perhaps you could. For one day. The deeper challenge is not a single day. It is the knowledge that tomorrow will demand the same strength after today has already taken part of it. Endurance is a resource, like flour, like water, like grass. It can run out. The strongest emigrant may eventually sit beside the road and refuse to move. The most hopeful family may become silent. A marriage may collapse under pressure. A parent may become harsh. A child may stop asking when they will arrive. The trail wears people down until personality itself becomes cargo. Some discard kindness. Some discard pride. Some discover abilities they never knew they possessed. The journey changes them before Oregon does. When survivors later describe the trail, they often remember specific moments rather than the entire distance. A river at sunset. A grave under a cottonwood tree. The first sight of Chimney Rock. A night when wolves howled. A stranger who shared food. The smell of wet canvas. The mountain snow. Human memory does not preserve months evenly. It keeps images. That is how we should imagine the Oregon Trail. Not as one continuous procession of wagons beneath a perfect sky, but as a sequence of fragile scenes. A young woman standing beside the Missouri River, looking east, one final time. A boy collecting buffalo chips for the fire. A father cutting a name into stone. A doctor opening a medicine chest while a patient dehydrates beyond help. A native trader exchanging salmon for metal tools. A mother holding a newborn inside a wagon during rain. Men pulling a rope as a wagon descends a hill. A family throwing furniture into the desert. A ferryman watching the river. An ox collapsing in its harness. A grave completed before dawn. A valley appearing through trees. A door opening on the first rough cabin in Oregon. No single image explains the trail. Together they reveal its truth. It was ordinary people placed in extraordinary conditions. It was one of the largest voluntary migrations in 19th century North America, but the freedom of the migrants existed inside a larger process of forced transformation. It was a road toward opportunity and a corridor of death. It was a family journey and a national project. It was remembered as triumph because the nation that grew from it wanted triumph. But the ruts in the ground tell a quieter story. Wheels passed here. Bodies worked here. People hoped here. People suffered here. Some vanished here. The trail does not say who deserved the future. It only shows who moved through the land and what movement left behind. As evening returns to the imagined camp, the fire burns low. The sick person is worse. The lost ox has not been found. The wagon wheel repaired in the morning is beginning to loosen again. A woman counts the remaining flour. A man studies the western sky. Children lie beneath blankets. No one knows exactly how far they travelled. No one knows what tomorrow will bring. The captain says the train must start early. The mountains are still far away. The season is moving. In the darkness, someone writes a few lines in a diary. The handwriting is difficult because the wagon shook all day and the writer's hands are tired. The entry does not describe manifest destiny. It does not mention national expansion. It does not explain the political future of Oregon. It says the road was bad. It says the rain was cold. It says a neighbour's child died. It says the family travelled 12 miles. Then the diary closes. This is history before it becomes history. Small, uncertain, unaware of the monument that will later be built around it. Tomorrow the wagons will move again. Years later, railroads will cross the continent. Decades later, highways will follow. Generations later, people will speak of pioneers as if they belonged to legend. But tonight, there is only a tired family beneath canvas. The Oregon Trail is not yet a symbol. It is wet clothing, low supplies, a weak animal, a dark horizon, and a choice that must be made at sunrise. stand up, or remain behind. For those who stood, the road continued. For those who could not, the continent kept their silence. And beneath the modern roads, fences, farms, reservoirs, towns, and power lines, that silence remains. It waits in the shallow ruts. It waits beside vanished graves. It waits in treaties that were never honoured. It waits in family stories polished by time. It waits in the distance between the heroic painting and the human reality. The Oregon Trail did not simply lead people to a new world. It destroyed one version of the West and built another. It carried dreams across rivers and left bones beside them. It proved how far people would travel for land, how much they could endure for their children, and how easily hope could become justification. You probably would not last one day, not because you are weaker than the emigrants, but because the world that trained them has disappeared. They knew how to mend, harness, preserve, carry, cut, build, and endure, because daily life already demanded those skills. Yet even they failed. Even they became sick. Even they panicked. Even they misjudged rivers and weather. Even they watched their plans collapse. The difference is not that they were fearless. The difference is that once they crossed the Missouri, fear had to walk with them. There was no easy road back. So they moved west beneath an enormous sky, one painful day at a time, carrying everything they believed the future required. Some reached Oregon. Some found the life they wanted. Some found hardship in a new place. Some became names in diaries. Some became names carved into stone. Most became anonymous. But the trail remains because the choices made along it still shape the land. The farms, cities, borders, roads, conflicts and communities of the Pacific Northwest did not appear naturally. They were built through movement, policy, struggle, survival, and loss. To look at the Oregon Trail only as an adventure is to see the wagon and ignore the road beneath it. To look at it only as tragedy is to ignore the human hope inside the wagon. The truth is the contrast. A child laughing beside a burial ground, a beautiful valley reached through dispossession, a family saved by cooperation inside a national project of conquest, a promise of freedom surrounded by exclusion, a road toward life marked by death. That contrast is the Oregon Trail, and perhaps that is what still connects it to the present. We continue to move toward futures we believe will save us. We still follow promises printed by people who may not understand the road. We still carry too much. We still underestimate the cost of arrival. We still build comfort on histories we prefer not to examine. And we still wake before difficult journeys, wondering whether we have enough strength for one more day. The wagons are gone. The question remains, what are we willing to carry? What are we willing to abandon? Who pays for the future we are trying to reach? And when later generations look back at the road we built, will they see courage, blindness, or both? The fire fades, the prairie becomes dark. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Oregon waits, not as paradise, not as destiny, only as a place. The dream belongs to the travellers, the cost belongs to history, and at sunrise, the wheels begin to turn again.